What's going on, guys? Track 2. Yes, time and a word. This is the track Then. Alright, let's do it. Bam. Fade in. Little sweep of the cool with the guitar. Ah. Yeah, I like that little guitar part. Notice how during in that part the guitar is kind of buried. It is. And they're in the same place. It's a cool song though. Truth is just for the being, and there's a sight for seeing them. Thoughts will be thought together soon in our minds forever. Guitar is like lazier playing, it sounds like a bit, you know what I mean? You know, the time is where Chris Squire is like just drilling it. It's just, right? This is already so different than the first album. You got some guitar swells, right?
And in a time that's closer, life will be even bolder than.
Cool.
Love is the only answer. Hate is the root of
Very cool bass. Nice. Yeah, I like that.
Soon in our minds forever.
Okay. That's cool. I like it. I like it. I think it's cool. I like that song. Yeah, I like that one. There was a little bit of Peter Banks getting buried. I think it was the last song where I mentioned the James Jamerson thing with Chris Squire, more of a James Jamerson type style bass line. I only brought that up because of someone brought it up in, I think it was the second track of 90125, where I was like, where's Chris Squire? Kind of thing, right? And somebody in the comments mentioned James Jamerson. I was like, I would never, like, as a James Jamerson fan, I would never say any of that sounded like James Jamerson. This sounds like like more that kind of style, more James Jamerson's type style, a bit, for sure. Cool bass part. I liked the organ. I liked all of their parts. You know, all the things that they were playing. I thought that was cool. The strings were fine. There was more strings on this one than there was brass. There was only brass in like 2 parts basically. Not as much. Strings were more on it. The strings are the only thing that I'll say about the strings, at least with this song, maybe with all of them, because it sounds like, you know, they're doing the same thing in both of these songs now. Is that, like, you know, the strings are just over here. I feel like maybe if there was more of a spread, that would be maybe better and also help create space for, like, the guitar and the keys, because the guitar and the keys and the strings, they're all kind of more or less in the same kind of range. They're kind of doing the same types of things, right? They're making harmony, right? They're like filling out harmony, right? The keys are playing the keys, the guitar is playing the chords and little parts here and there. Same thing with the strings. You know, they may be playing little lines or whatever, but also, like, there's harmony within there. So in that way, because it's over here and because Peter Banks is also over here, Peter wasn't loud enough to overcome that, you know, those strings. I feel like more of a spread, like sonically, just like, you know, if this whole entire screen is what you're hearing, right? This is the center, and this is where let me try and get myself correct. This is where Peter Banks is, you know, in the audio. And this is specific to, you know, if you hear it better if you have your headphones on obviously. But you can hear it in stereo also, because that's what this is, stereo, right? This is where the organ is, Tony K, right? That's his name. This is where Peter Banks is. You got Chris Squire here. You had the strings kind of up here, right? That's kind of how I think about it. The strings are like up here. You got Peter Banks down here, right? Just here, just right. Most of the band is all here. You got Peter Banks here. And you got the strings up here. But it's kind of washy. So he's just getting washed out. He's not loud enough to overcome all the stuff that's up here that's just kind of like just washing him out. If there were more of a spread, if it was maybe not right here and maybe more here, you know, across a bit, or maybe like in these two areas, something like that, that might be better to kind of pick out. It probably wouldn't bury him as much, you know, because they're over here, they're really burying this side, not so much this side. So that made me look into like, oh, okay, who mixed this? Because that's like that kind of thing to me is like a mix thing where you're putting it in the mix. Well, they're right here. Well, maybe make room. Make room. How do you make room? By panning. Panning is where it is in the sonic field, right? Is that a technical term? Sonic field? I don't know. I just thought of it right now. I'm not technical if you haven't figured that out, by the way, in that kind of way. I don't care about, they're just words and definitions and words to sounds, right? Like made up words to sounds. Okay, so, or also frequency, EQ, things like that, changing all that kind of stuff. Volume also, because, you know, in the center is Chris Squire, but also is a lot of the drums. And they live in the same place. So how do they live in the same place without varying? Well, there's a little bit of varying, but also things like tone, timbre, which EQ has to do with. Also, they're not the same instruments. It's not like two bass players or two guitar players, you know, two string instruments, right? You got these strings and these strings, things like that. So there's that. And then there's also volume. If one is obviously louder than the other, you know, because there's this kind of depth, but there's also this kind of depth in mixing. Does this make sense? Right? All this matters. So where it is, so if Chris Squire is here, which he's here, because he is loud, right? He is loud. He's here. The drums are back more. You hear it, and that's fine. Drums, in a lot of records, drums are back. You know, or even like specifically like cymbals are often back more, but cymbals often are like higher up. They're in higher places, you know, up here. So the drums, where they are, if they're too back, you just turn the volume up and they get louder, you know, and it might be as if this is getting louder, but this is getting softer a bit because they're kind of taking the same space. Does that kind of make sense? Am I explaining this well enough? So there's your little primer. There's a little bit. Anyways, I like the song. I think it's cool. I think it's pretty cool. You can already tell this is a different, you know, they're moving in a direction. They're getting more complex. They're being more adventurous. Different things with their arrangements, stuff like that, right? They broke it down. They got a little bit kind of spacey for a second, right? They had the guitar come way down and just reverb louder, right? So they made like the guitar sound way smaller back here, but the reverb sound way bigger, right? Not way bigger. It was still much lower than the bass, right? This is when like the bass was here, John Anderson was doing his thing, and the guitar was back here doing his Wes Montgomery stuff, right? So by that I mean playing octaves, stuff like that. I like it. I think it's cool. All right, next. What's up next? What is up next is Everydays, which is Stephen Still's song. So this is the next cover. Cool. All right, we'll get to it. Catch you later.